In well-balanced software development teams, those where you've got developers on all levels of experience, from juniors to senior developers or lead developers, one of the main responsibilities of senior developers is to support other team members, especially those with less experience. It's not an easy thing to do. Besides technical skills like debugging or problem solving, you need to have some personal skills like empathy or some teaching skills, and well, you'll definitely need some patience. On top of that, it's not very easy to start because you might be doubting your own skills or you might not feel very comfortable giving advice to others. So today I'm going to talk about how to start supporting other team members, what are different ways in which you can do it, and why, even if you do not feel very confident about your own skills, you should start collaborating with other team members, giving them advice and helping them in reaching their goals and finishing their work. My name is Gregory, you're watching Becoming a Senior Developer. Let's do it! If you're one of the less experienced people in your team, it might feel quite intimidating to give advice to others. You might feel that you are not skilled enough or that others already know everything that you know, and whatever advice you would give them, they have already considered and probably chose something else. Of course, that's not true. Everyone has different experience, different knowledge, different skills, and the fact that we can combine these skills together usually produces better results. However, this feeling that you've got is perfectly normal. It's alright that you don't feel like you should be giving advice because that's not your position yet. The feeling of comfort when giving advice and suggesting something to others will come over time. The more you do, the more natural it will come to you. Being a more active team member, someone who collaborates more, raises more points, more questions, and helps others is definitely worth it. It will give you a lot of personal satisfaction, it will contribute to a team's results, and also it will help you grow as a developer and in the future as coach and mentor. But how to start it when you are not feeling very comfortable and you're afraid that your advice is not needed and it might be wrong? I suggest you start with something simple. For example, when one of your team members is going to work on a feature or is going to fix a bug, in the area of the application that you had previously experienced with, you can just drop a message saying, hey, I have worked with this code before. If something is not clear or if you have any questions, just drop me a message. It's really that simple. Just drop someone a message, just offer help. Even if this help won't be used in the end, if someone will say, yeah, thank you, I'm fine, that already provides something for both of you. You are stepping out a bit of your comfort zone. You're offering help. Even though it's not used, you already did something. And the other person, even if they will not ask for your help, they will feel better that someone cares about them and that someone offers support. My team members, even though much less experienced than me, often ask whether I need some help, whether everything's clear, and whether there is something that I have doubts about. And I must admit that it always makes me feel better. Even if I know what I'm doing, even if I know exactly what to do, just the fact that someone's asking, hey, let me know if you need any help, that makes me feel like part of the team. And what if someone actually asks you for help? What if someone tells you, hey, yeah, actually I have some questions, can you help me? There are a few ways in which you can work together. The first one is just to go together over a problem. Grab a laptop or a pen and paper, sit down together in some room and go through the problem. Try to crack it together. See what are the doubts that your teammate has. In order to make such session productive, first, ensure that you find some common tasks that you can sit together, whether in the same room or have a video call, so that you can collaborate in real time. And second, do some preparations. Check the task that your teammate is working on. See if there are particular questions that they have or whether they do not understand the problem at all. You can have a look at the code that you will be getting involved in to understand and to remind yourself what it is about and how it works. During the session, remember that the main goal is to help the other person to understand the problem, to overcome the obstacle and to make sure that they believe that everything about the task is clear from now on, that they know how to continue their work until either the end of the task or some milestone. Another way of collaborating together and supporting your team members is pair programming. This is a more advanced, very famous yet I believe underused technique of producing good code and cracking problems together. The idea of pair programming is that two people sit together, preferably in the same room, but not necessarily, and solve certain problem together with code. One person performs the role of a driver. That person holds the keyboard, writes the code, and actively solves the problem, while the other person is so-called pilot or navigator. This person looks at the code, asks some questions whether something is not clear, notices some mistakes, and suggests some changes. Both people switch roles every now and then. For example, every half an hour or every hour. Pair programming is pretty advanced because normally we have a habit of writing code alone, and having someone next to us talking to us the whole time might feel awkward in the beginning. And it might also be feeling awkward when you're the pilot and you just look at the code, read it, and suggest changes, but you're not actively writing code. As every technique, it just requires some practice, and after some time it becomes more natural and more efficient to write code together. The advantages of pair programming are that usually it produces better code because you have the next person sitting next to you that immediately finds bugs or notices some inconsistencies or notices some patterns that they can combine and produce a better solution. Pair programming might also in some cases replace code review because your code is already reviewed by the pilot, by the second person. So there is no need for a separate code review. However, that's not always the case, and in some companies both pair programming and code review coexist together. Finally, it might save time because even though two people work at the same time at the same problem, the code that is produced has fewer bugs and goes through fewer iterations of requested changes during code review. So altogether, the time that is spent on that by those two people will be the same or shorter than the time spent just by one person, plus the time spent on the reviews and on solving the bugs in the future. And another interesting technique is pair code review. Code review is not the topic of this video. I will talk about it in the next episode. But pair code review, the idea of pair code review is pretty interesting and falls into the category of supporting others and working together. Pair code review is just like pair programming. Instead of coding alone, you code with another person. Instead of doing code review alone, you do code review together with the person that wrote the code. There are two ways to do it, and I believe that both of them can be efficient, but that depends on the situation. The first way is that both people, the reviewer and the author of the code, sit together and the author of the code explains the code to the reviewer, and then the reviewer asks the questions, just like during pair programming, and notices some mistakes and suggests some changes. And the second way of doing it is that as a reviewer, first, you go alone through the code, you try to understand it, you write down all the comments and questions, and before publishing your review, you sit down together with the author of the code, and instead of going through the whole piece of code together, you just go through your questions. This way, the process of working together is a bit faster, but overall, it might be less efficient because initially, you need to understand the code on your own. You can't ask all the questions immediately. So which way you choose depends on you, on the pull request that you might be reviewing, on the other person. But anyway, the idea of the pair review is really good. I personally did it a lot of times and I find this technique very, very useful. And before we wrap up this episode, a few do's and don'ts when it comes to helping others. Don't be impatient. See what I did there? double negation, remove it. Be patient. Remember that whoever you work with, they possess different knowledge than you. They learn at different pace than you. They have different experience than you. Therefore, something that's very obvious to you might not be obvious at all to them. I personally used to struggle with that. I used to believe that the way I explained things was very clear and that it was the other person's fault that they couldn't understand it. And it caused some unnecessary stress both for me and for the other developer. It took me some time, but I understood and learned how to be patient and how to adjust my style of explanation depending on who I talk to and depending on whether they understand something immediately or whether I need to repeat or rephrase it. Don't worry about making mistakes. I have given so many bad advices and suggestions during code reviews or during the program discussion. Of course, I'm not proud of it, but it's natural. Everyone makes mistakes. Of course, you should think about it and do your best to ensure that your advice, that your help is actually correct, that's valuable. But if you make a mistake, that's fine. Just say, hey, I'm sorry, I haven't thought about it. Learn the lesson and move on. I know that it sounds so easy when I say it, and it's absolutely not easy when you try to do it. But it will become more natural the more you work with other developers, the more you try to help others. Don't force anything. If you do not feel like working on some particular feature with someone, if you don't want to do pair programming for some reason, if you don't feel comfortable giving advice on some particular topic, don't force it. If you offer advice but the other person doesn't use it, if you offer help but someone says thanks but I don't need it at this moment, don't force it. It's fine. And if you suggest some technique like pair code review or pair programming and the other person is skeptical, you can say, hey, let's give it a try for like half an hour, one session, or you can send them some resources about it to explain them what are the benefits of these techniques and that you can try them in the future together. It's also fun to learn new things together. So I always encourage people to try different techniques, to try different ways of collaborating, because even if some of them don't work well, even if someone realizes that pair programming is totally not for them, they at least tried and they know what works for them and what doesn't. And that means that they learned something new. Alright, that's it for today. I hope that you are at least a little bit more confident in giving advice to others now. As I mentioned before, the next episode will be about code review, a process, a technique, a practice that I find critical in the process of developing software. And I believe that a lot of people struggle with that because they don't know what is the goal and what is the best way to do the code review. So stay tuned and see you in the next episode.